Welcome to the deep dive. I am so glad you're joining us today because, well, I want you to imagine a world where your bank account, your degrees, your job title, all of that just means absolutely nothing.
Yeah, which is pretty hard to do, right?
Right. I mean, we live in a society that is totally obsessed with building these incredibly complex, multifaceted scorecards for success. We look at a person's intelligence, their wealth, their status, or, even just how flawlessly curated their life looks on social media on a Tuesday afternoon.
Oh, exactly. We measure everything.
We really do. But what if all of those metrics were completely irrelevant? Today, our mission is to thoroughly unpack this brief but fiercely uncompromising philosophical essay that basically takes our modern scorecard, rips it to shreds, and argues that the only thing determining your worth is one single invisible trait.
And it is a fascinating piece of work.
It is. The text is titled Trustworthiness is the Quality of High-Level Life. It was written by Feng in June 2020, translated by Kinyu, and edited by Kayer.
Yeah, and it's a remarkable, challenging piece of writing precisely because of, well, how little room it leaves for our usual modern excuses.
Oh, zero room.
Right. To really grasp what Feng is arguing here, we have to look at how he completely redefines the word credit or trustworthiness. I mean, when you hear the word credit today, you immediately think of finances, right?
Yeah, of course. Like FICO scores, loan approvals, interest rates.
Exactly. But according to this text, credit is not a financial metric at all. It is the ultimate invisible wealth of a person's existence.
Invisible wealth. I love that term.
Yeah, and it is the sole metric used by the author to determine whether your life is classified as a high-level life or a low-level life.
Okay, let's unpack this because that distinction, high level versus low level, is central to literally everything we're going to talk about today.
It really is the foundation.
Right. And the author explicitly capitalizes the word life in the text. He's not talking about mere biological respiration, is he? It's treated almost like this spiritual classification.
Yeah, it goes way beyond just being alive.
Exactly. I keep thinking about it like a spiritual credit score. Think about how a financial credit score actually works for you in the physical world. You have this invisible 3-digit number attached to your name, and it secretly dictates the boundaries of your reality.
Right, it dictates whether you can buy a house, get a car, rent an apartment.
Exactly. If that financial score tanks, physical doors literally lock from the outside. And this text seems to be arguing that your trustworthiness score, your spiritual credit score, operates the exact same way.
But with much higher stakes.
Yeah, because instead of dictating what you can buy, it dictates the literal quality, trajectory, and weight of your entire existence.
That's an incredibly precise way to visualize it. What's fascinating here is how the text explicitly and frankly aggressively rejects all the traditional metrics of success we usually fall back on to artificially inflate that score.
Right, all the things we usually brag about.
Yes. The author writes that a person's quality has absolutely nothing to do with their ability, their wisdom, their wealth, or their status. It even goes out of its way to say it has nothing to do with their physical looks.
Wait, it literally mentions physical looks.
It does. The text reduces the entirety of human value to this stark, binary equation. If a person sticks to their credit, meaning if they are fundamentally trustworthy and keep their word as a lend, their quality is excellent.
And if not?
If they do not keep their promises, their quality is poor. There is no middle ground.
Which is so completely counter to how we operate, right? I really want you, the listener, to pause and reflect on your own life for a second. Think about the last time you evaluated yourself or, maybe someone you work with.
Oh, we do this all the time.
We do. How often do we excuse a profound lack of reliability just because someone is highly capable? We say things like, yeah, my business partner is always late and they constantly flake on our plans, but they're an absolute genius in the boardroom.
Or they're incredibly charismatic and bring in a lot of money.
Exactly. But this text strips every single one of those excuses away. It says your brilliance and your wealth are utterly irrelevant if your spiritual credit is bankrupt.
Exactly. And the author doesn't just leave this in the realm of abstract personal philosophy.
Right, it gets very practical.
It does. The text maps out exactly what happens when this invisible wealth goes bankrupt on a broader scale. If we strip away all those excuses, the fallout is entirely predictable.
So what does that look like?
Well, Feng outlines a very clear progression, a kind of structural domino effect caused by untrustworthiness. And he applies this exact same logic across widely different scales of human organization.
Right, so if your spiritual credit score hits 0, it doesn't just ruin your Tuesday. The author argues that the single failure is the root cause of systemic collapse.
Total collapse, yes.
He details these scales of failure moving from the macro down to the meso and finally to the micro level of society. At the macro level, the text states that if a country's leader does not keep their word, that entire country will inevitably fall into decline.
Which makes sense historically, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Then it moves to the meso level, the organizational level. If the leader of an enterprise fails to keep their promises, that company is destined to eventually go bankrupt.
Also tracking logically.
Right. But then he zooms all the way in to the micro level, the individual. He writes that if an individual breaks their word, they will resort to playing, and I quote, many small tricks, and they will never be trusted again in their lifetime.
It's a cascading failure based on a single flaw. The text is essentially arguing that trustworthiness isn't just a polite social convention. It is the structural integrity of reality itself.
Okay, but I have to push back on this grouping.
Go for it.
Why does the author equate the fate of an entire nation with the fate of a single guy playing small tricks in his personal life?
Fair question.
Because, on one hand, you have geopolitical collapse, economic ruin, millions of people affected. On the other hand, you have a guy acting petty, maybe being deceitful to his friends, or, cutting corners at his desk job. Why put those in the exact same category? It feels like a massive philosophical leap.
Well, it feels like a leap until you look at the mechanism the author is describing. The text views the mechanism of failure as fundamentally identical, regardless of the scale.
Okay, how so?
Think of it less like an economic theory and more like engineering. Imagine trustworthiness is the concrete used to pour the foundation of a building.
Okay, I'm with you.
If you use cheap, compromised concrete, it doesn't matter if you were trying to build a single-story house or a 100-story skyscraper. The mechanism of the collapse is the exact same. The foundation simply cannot hold the weight.
I see. So the scale of the disaster changes, but the physics of the disaster don't.
Precisely. According to this text, the underlying law of the universe is that any structure built on broken promises cannot support weight. Yeah. If the weight is a national economy, the country declines because the citizens and allies lose faith in the structure. If the weight is an enterprise, it goes bankrupt because employees and consumers realize the foundation is hollow.
And for the individual.
If the weight is just a single human life, that life descends into petty deception, those small tricks the author mentions, because that individual no longer has the structural integrity of trust to engage in meaningful high-level interactions.
Without trust, you can't build. You can only scheme.
Exactly.
That makes perfect sense. If you can't participate in high-level collaboration because no one believes a word you say, your only survival mechanism is to play small tricks.
Yes. You are relegated to the margins of society, scavenging through deception because you cannot participate in the open market of trust.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though.
Okay.
Because if the consequences of breaking trust are that severe, if we were talking about national decline, corporate bankruptcy, or ruined petty life, then how are we supposed to handle the people in our lives who break our trust?
All right, what's the practical application?
Yeah, what do we do with the person who poured the cheap concrete? This is where the text introduces what I can only describe as an absolutely zero-tolerance policy.
Yes, the one-strike rule. It is, without a doubt, the most challenging part of the essay for a modern reader to digest.
Oh, it's intense. The text explicitly states that when associating with people, if they break their promise even once, you should never trust them again.
Never again.
One strike and you are out forever. And honestly, I have to challenge the author here on behalf of you, the listener. Isn't this incredibly, almost inhumanly hard?
It definitely sounds that way at first glance.
Right. We live in a chaotic world. What about an honest mistake? What if you genuinely forget something or there's a miscommunication? What if you get caught in a massive traffic jam and miss a meeting you promised to attend?
Yeah, life happens.
Exactly. This text seems to leave zero room for the simple, undeniable reality of human error. It treats every failure as malice.
This raises an important question, and it's the natural friction point for anyone reading this essay. But the text anticipates this resistance.
It does.
Yeah, the author provides a very specific justification for this zero-tolerance policy. To understand it, we have to look at the specific proverb. The essay quotes, "A leopard cannot change its spots."
Okay.
If we connect this to the bigger picture the author is painting, we have to realize that this text does not view a broken promise as a mere behavioral mistake or an operational error.
Wait, so getting stuck in traffic and missing a meeting isn't just a scheduling error?
In Schiffing's framework, it's not about the traffic jam. It's about the nature of the promise made and the nature of the person making it.
I see.
A person of high-level life wouldn't make a frivolous promise they couldn't guarantee, and if chaos intervened, the way they handle the breach of trust would reflect their nature. But the core argument the author is making with the leopard analogy is that a broken promise is a revelation.
A revelation of what?
It is a revelation of the person's fundamental, unchangeable nature.
So the broken promise is just the symptom. The disease is the person's actual nature.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The author's logic is that the behavior, the breaking of the word, is merely the outward expression of an internal rot.
Wow.
Because their nature, their spots, like the leopard, cannot change, the text concludes that this person will inevitably disappoint you a second time, a third time, and what it calls the nth time.
Okay, wow. So to the author, trusting someone who has already broken their word isn't an act of forgiveness or grace. It's actually an act of delusion on your part.
That is precisely the argument. You are ignoring the fundamental reality of who they have revealed themselves to be.
You're ignoring the spots.
Exactly. You are looking at a leopard and pretending it's a house cat and then acting surprised when you get bitten again. The text demands that you see reality clearly. Broken promise means the structural integrity of that person is compromised.
Yeah.
Do not build your house on their concrete.
That is heavy. A broken promise is basically a person showing you their true, unchangeable spots.
Yeah.
And once you see those spots, you are instructed to walk away and never trust them again.
Which is a tough pill to swallow.
It really is. Which naturally leads us to ask about the ultimate consequence for that person. If breaking a promise reveals this flawed, unchangeable nature, what happens to the individual who loses their credit? What is the final trade-off in this philosophy?
The stakes become absolute here. The text presents a stark, almost jarring conclusion about the value of a life without credit.
Yeah, it goes way beyond just social consequences.
It leaves the realm of social dynamics entirely and enters the realm of existential survival.
It really does. The author makes the most extreme claim possible. The text says that it is better to lose absolutely everything, your wealth, your status, even your very life, than to lose your credit.
Let that sink in.
So what does this all mean? Why would the author argue that literal biological death is actually preferable to a loss of trustworthiness?
Well, to understand that, we have to look at the two profound reasons the text provides. One is spiritual, and the other is existential.
Okay, let's start with the spiritual.
First, on the spiritual side, the text explicitly states that once you lose your credit, you will never have much chance of going to heaven.
He ties keeping your word directly to salvation.
Yes. The author directly ties the keeping of promises to the ultimate destination of the human soul.
That is a massive claim.
It is. Your spiritual salvation isn't dependent on ritual or belief in this framework. It is entirely dependent on your trustworthiness in this life. If your spiritual credit score is bankrupt, the doors to heaven, quite literally, do not open for you.
And the existential reason. Why is it better to be dead in the physical world than untrustworthy?
The existential reason brings us all the way back to the concept we started with, high-level life versus low-level life.
Right, the capitalized life.
Yes. This writes that if a person is not trustworthy, their life quality is, and this is a direct quote, inferior to that of a dog.
Inferior to that of a dog. I have to say that is a brutal, almost shocking comparison.
It is brutal, but it is entirely intentional within the logic of the essay. Think about why he uses a dog. A dog, in its natural state, acts purely according to its instinct and its nature. It is authentic. It doesn't scheme.
Right, a dog is just a dog.
Exactly. But a human being who has broken their trust, who resorts to those small tricks of deception we discussed earlier, has degraded their own existence to something less than natural.
They're acting against their own potential.
They have become a counterfeit human. They possess the intellect of a human, but lack the structural integrity of one. Therefore, their existential value plummets below that of a simple animal that is at least true to itself. They have bankrupted their invisible wealth.
That makes the inferior to a dog line make so much more sense. It's not just an insult, it's a calculation of authenticity.
Exactly.
The dog is real and the liar is fake. And to bring this entire uncompromising philosophy to its climax, the author uses this one defining metaphor. The text states that trustworthiness is one's first line of defense in life.
Yes, the first line of defense.
Think about what a first line of defense actually is. If you look at biology, The cellular membrane is a first line of defense that keeps a cell intact and keeps the chaos of the environment out.
That's a great example.
Or, if you look at a medieval city, the outer wall is the first line of defense. It is the boundary that makes existence possible.
Exactly. And the author's final warning is a natural conclusion to that metaphor. Once that line of defense is broken, life doesn't just suffer a temporary setback.
No, it's much worse.
The text says life will collapse across the board.
Total systemic failure.
Yes. Once trust is gone, every other aspect of your life, your relationships, your business ventures, your spiritual standing, your basic existential value as a being implodes.
It all just crumbles.
Why? Because the foundational structure, the cellular membrane, has been completely removed. The chaos floods in, and the high-level life ceases to exist.
This has been an incredibly intense journey.
It really has.
To summarize what we've unpacked today from Shuifeng's essay, this text presents a worldview where trustworthiness isn't just a nice character trait to put on a resume.
No, not at all.
It is the singular, defining, invisible wealth that dictates everything. It is the structural concrete that dictates the fate of entire nations, the survival of companies, and the literal spiritual destination of your own soul.
It leaves no room for debate.
Right. The text aggressively rejects your wealth, your intelligence, and your status, demanding only that you keep your word under penalty of a total, across-the-board life collapse.
It is a profound challenge to our modern sensibilities, especially in an era where we play so fast and loose with our commitments.
Oh, totally.
I would encourage you, as you go about your week, to consider the uncompromising lens of this text the next time you are tempted to make a casual promise you aren't absolutely sure you can keep.
Yeah, that's good advice.
Think about your own life. How often do we throw around the words, I promise, or I guarantee, without considering the structural weight of what we are saying? Under this framework, you aren't just managing expectations, you are managing your spiritual survival.
It really makes you second-guess texting a friend and saying, I'll definitely be there in 5 minutes, when you know perfectly well you haven't even put your shoes on yet.
Right.
Under Shuifeng's framework, you didn't just make a scheduling error, you just bankrupted your invisible wealth. But I want to leave you, the listener, with a final thought to ponder, something that builds on this entire exploration.
What is it?
If trustworthiness truly is the ultimate first line of defense, and if, as the text argues, one single failure reveals an unchangeable nature because a leopard cannot change its spots, how do we reconcile this with the deeply human capacity for growth, for learning, and for redemption?
Oh, that's the big question.
If a single broken promise permanently defines your entire spiritual worth and ruins your invisible wealth forever, are any of us truly safe from the collapse? Or is the pursuit of high-level life an impossible standard for a flawed species?
That is the ultimate question this text leaves us wrestling with.
It really is. Thank you so much for joining us as we unpacked this incredible source material. We hope it gave you a new lens through which to view your own invisible wealth today. Until next time, keep exploring, and thanks for joining us on this deep dive.